Welcome to House Rule, a podcast about role-playing. We are on episode number 15. I am your host, Ed.
This is Jeff.
I'm Lee.
I'm Ebo.
And we have a special guest host with us this day, evening, whatever time it is when you're listening.
Yeah, my name is Rory.
Yeah.
I hope you guys are listening during the day.
Was one of you going to correct my numbering of the episodes? Because I am sticking with this. This is 15 now.
No,
Yes,
I
that's
think
right.
you're correct. We can't go back.
This is 15, isn't it?
We are in a 15 world now.
Awesome.
We're basically stuck with it now.
I can only remember the ones that are divisible by 5, so...
If
I can
we
also-
tried to go backwards, I'm pretty sure it would cause some sort of, I don't know, Star Trek shenanigans. Space-time continuum. I don't know. It's complicated.
Buzzwords.
Yeah.
All right, well,
By the way.
we have a bounty of interesting things to talk about. Starting with a subject that's near and dear to many a gamer's heart, and that is finding a group or finding a new group, as the case may sometimes be. You know, you have to play with somebody, and otherwise the hobby doesn't really work. Maybe.
Well, I mean, there's always masturbation. Sorry, I mean, if you're
Is
not
there
playing with
le-
anybody
tell us
else,
more.
you have to play with yourself.
Tell us more about your role-playing experience here.
Look, it gets complicated. Okay? I'm just saying.
What gaming book do you use for that?
I don't use a book.
There actually were a couple
I'd-
of first edition modules based around one-player games and jamming for yourself.
Yeah, you see, that is just weird because you know that somebody had mental sex with the character they made.
I thought there was like nudity and chainmail. Anyway, I would go with vampire.
First edition deities and demigods had nudity in it also.
Nice.
I mean, they made some nudity-related 3.5 books too, didn't they? They had like plastic on them, and we knew a dude who pre-ordered one of them.
Not to go on too much of a tangent, but they actually. I'm going backwards on a tangent. They actually, right after 4th edition came out, or a little while after 4th edition came out, they put on the D&D Insider a one-player little mini game thing.
Ugh.
It was neatish. I wasn't wild about it myself.
I think there's a world of difference, though, between one-on-one and just one guy.
Just one guy is one sad guy by himself playing Dungeons and Dragons because he's so desperate.
Oh no, I rolled a 2. Oh no, I'm dead.
On the one hand, I don't want to talk smack about anything that somebody enjoys, but on the other hand, they don't really make that anymore, and I kind of see why.
Yeah, it's like the saddest thing I've ever heard of.
I don't think it would be, if you really liked it, it wouldn't be too sad to play it, but to go to a store and buy it, that would be sad.
No, that would have to be available like internet download only.
I guess.
And
It's
if you
like
have the internet,
it's like
then-
the difference between it's like why no one goes to porn stores anymore
Yeah, there are a lot.
because you can download it.
There are a lot of ways to avert shame from yourself. I
That's true.
I am versed in the art. But anyway, back to the issue at hand, the real issue. I mean, not to say that
Did
this
we
is
even
part
start?
of it.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say completely
start.
ignoring the fact that you don't have a group is one way to deal with the issue of not having a group. I frankly, I don't get to play as often as I would like, and at least for the time being, my answer, instead of going out and trying to find some sort of a group, mainly because of prohibitive scheduling, is just to work on games and think about games, and that's,
I thought for sure you were going to say your answer was alcohol.
that is a great aid. Yeah, I mean, other hobbies, I guess you'd call that.
We'll stick that in the other hobbies category, I think.
Alcohol is kind of like rolling the dice, though, isn't it?
Wow, that was
so bad.
deep and kind of
Wow.
weak.
met with complete silence.
We all just
That'll teach you to talk.
we all just sort of took a breath and we're like, Evo's gonna kill himself soon. We got to do something about this.
Do we?
It's fun if drinking is a one-player game. The alcohol wins the dice, and that.
You play until you fall asleep.
I liked your metaphor more when it was just a pathetic cry for help.
Now that it's a pathetic cry for help with some legitimacy behind it, I'm actually a little concerned.
All right, but
Oh,
him.
man. So, like, yeah, finding a group for gaming is awkward. And
As awkward as that was.
well, okay. Case in
just trying to transition.
case in point. Let's
I
talk.
ever had a problem with finding a game group was like right when I started role playing, right when I was like interested in role playing, and I didn't know where to start. And I was lucky enough to know a dude who knew basically all the friends I know now. And then he moved away, and I was left with all of them.
Yeah.
So now I have pretty much always had a role playing group readily available whenever the urge arises.
I was in my first gaming group before I really knew what it was. So the fact that everybody who I had once played with a few exceptions, is now scattered to the four winds, most of you in sunny California. I've been thinking a lot about this just because I so far have not had the initiative or or general desperation to just go out really hunting. So I'm not even really sure what the best way or any way to do it would be.
Well, we know several role players in your area
I
that
know.
would probably be receptive.
Okay,
Yeah, you
sure.
Do
I'm
you
not
could, you could
saying that
roleplay
I
with, like,
don't.
Well, I think there's some issues that come into play, and I think specifically for our group, and maybe this is just maybe every group eventually gets to this point, but what you said about being in a role-playing group before you knew what it was is really important. Like, we've always been just like, yeah, relatively nerdy guys, but we were kind of like, we just played video games together and hung out and role-played every once in a while. And eventually that turned into role-playing more, but we weren't like, we didn't seek each other out because we were role-players. And that
Right.
is what we're talking about now, which is totally different. So really, for us, we don't really have any experience finding a role-playing group because it just kind of happened organically.
Right.
On the other hand, I have had to search out gaming groups a couple of times. While I grew up with you guys and gamed with you for a long time, I moved away to college and then moved again for grad school to a different location. And both times I've had to utilize different means to find groups to game with. So I found 3 methods that were effective, basically. Local gaming stores are always a really good place to start. They often have brochures. The people who show up there are sometimes hit or miss. Some of them are really people you don't want to necessarily be gaming with a lot of the time. But if you weed through it, you can often find groups, and it's a good place to hang out, to find
Here's
stuff.
like a socially awkward question. Like, do you just like go in there and like talk to the guy running the shop? Hey, know anyone who's running games? Or like,
Most local gaming stores have a bulletin board of some sort that posts
Okay.
games or post events, and a lot of them have websites now, so you can look at when they run events. So even if you are a little bit hesitant about finding a gaming group, go to like a board game night or a Magic tournament or something like that and participate and just talk about that you're looking for a group to some of the people who look fun there. And that was really effective, actually.
social networking at its finest.
Um,
Okay. It's
Yes.
cool.
with social networking also, they actually do have a lot of cities have meetup groups specifically around gaming now. So if you go to the meetup.com and sign up and look for some of the different groups, there's many things like our Chicago area gamers or other groups like that have a posted like monthly meeting to form groups and get people in touch. Another one is penandpaper.com is another group that focuses on helping people find gaming groups. They're kind of like forum websites specifically devoted to or having a large focus in helping gamers find groups.
Awesome.
Yeah, I didn't
The
even realize that people, would make a website specifically for that. Although I have been frequently schooled by the internet in the internet has everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes I forget.
I mean, they share other resources and stuff like that, and they have different discussion forums and stuff like that. But that's one of the major focuses that they do a lot of the time. The last way I had to find a group is gaming clubs. Especially if you're in high school or college, it's really easy to see if there's a local gaming club or if there was a local gaming club. Even if there wasn't one currently, they sometimes still have a contact member of the last leader on file or the last advisor if it's a college club, and they can get you in touch with people that way sometimes.
So how do you feel about like other methods? Like I hear, I browse Reddit more than is probably healthy, and people talk about like trying to find gaming groups on like Craigslist and that sort of thing. And I don't know, that seems like shadier than using some other websites. Just judging by the fact that I've used Craigslist once or twice.
I don't remember what the website was. When I first moved to Chicago, I had a lot of trouble finding a gaming group. Chicago is like a gaming void in some ways. All of the suburbs around it have gaming stores and gaming groups, but in the city itself, there seems to be a relative few number who are actually gaming regularly. So I went to one of these social networking sites that wasn't based off of gaming, and I looked for some people who had some posting, and we literally met in a restaurant, and we basically said, bring a gaming book. Show up at the restaurant, bring a gaming book, and if you see somebody else with a gaming book, join them at the table.
Huh. How many people came?
4 other people besides myself showed up, of which one of them we really didn't continue, and I started running a game 2 weeks later.
Why was that?
What book?
They didn't respond to your other emails. It wasn't us like trying to exclude them. They didn't. We exchanged email addresses and they just never responded.
I was just gonna say, did they bring like rifts or something? Is that no, yeah, we're not playing that.
So that you brought a GURPS book, we're just gonna have to send you home.
No, we had a first edition, a second edition, and a third edition D&D book show up though. So
What did you bring?
I brought a third edition player's handbook.
Okay.
Oh wow, playing the normal card.
Yep.
Didn't want to bust out the Drow of the Underdark.
Well, one of the players hadn't played since first edition and was coming back in after about a 15-year hiatus, and so he brought a first edition book.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Oh yeah, that's
And like I said, I started running 2 weeks later at that point and ran a game that lasted for about 2 years.
Awesome.
Damn. I call that successful.
And I'm still gaming with one of those individuals regularly, and another one has work issues that he can't show up to a game very often. But
yeah.
Sure.
Oh, he's like our Joe. That bastard.
It's like we
finished that game.
When Ed and Rory moved away. The long story short, I just ended up role playing with Lee and Nebo and Sean, but we were going to try and get more players in we spent maybe 2 weeks on that, and we went to the college, had a gaming group there, and
that was a no-go.
That was just a bad experience. Like, we got there, and like it was just an immediate problem of the kind of way we wanted to role play. People there either weren't interested or were absurdly disruptive. And
yeah, that was something else.
So like Rory, you keep talking about like one guy you just kind of falls off or you don't end up playing with. Like, how do you manage that? You just like not talk to him anymore? Like you're saying, you kind of have to weed through things. Like,
yeah, so my freshman year of college, I joined the local college gaming group, and I showed up to the meetings very regularly. They had monthly meetings that were just kind of administrative. Okay. But I also offered to run a game my first semester. And I actually started running a bi-weekly game alternating with another person. And the players were really not so good. There was...
So were they just new to it?
There was a young woman who was fairly new to it and didn't seem like she actually cared about gaming. I'm not quite sure why she was actually showing up.
Wow, that happened.
And she would show up sometimes, but she wouldn't really game. She mostly just derailed the game.
Right.
Then there were 2 other people who were in the same dorm as me who were
That's what
actually
Lee
good
does.
good gamers. I actually met them playing Yu-Gi-Oh in the hallway outside of their dorm room, and
Oh.
invited them to come to the gaming club, and had them show up at the gaming club and join my game.
Hey,
Yeah,
And
we met playing Yu-Gi-Oh in the hallway, and now we're role players
hey,
together.
hey, you guys look kind of nerdy. Come play role playing.
it was a bit of more of a process than that. I actually got a Yu-Gi-Oh deck and played with them
Oh, cool.
to kind of join, and then invited them to roleplay. And they had roleplayed before. They hadn't been looking for a group actively, but they were role players in high school who
Yeah.
were interested in getting involved again.
I know this is a tangent, but you're actually like really good at that game, right?
Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yeah, I thought you were saying you like played it online and you like schooled everyone or something.
I played it for a while. I have been out of it for so long now that I played the original season stuff, not any of the later expansions. So
Oh, okay.
it was fun at the beginning.
Oh man,
It's
Jack,
changed a lot
Concerned
since
that we
then.
knew a professional Yu-Gi-Oh player.
I know.
I mean, you know me. I like trying a lot of different games. So
That's true.
So anyway, not to interrupt your college gaming story.
well, the last member of the group who showed up was the problematical one. He was an old school gamer, and he tried to be a rules lawyer. But the problem was he was a rules lawyer for other systems. Then it is D&D 3rd edition at this point. It wasn't 3.5 yet.
Okay.
And he played a lot of things like GURPS and third party publisher stuff, and tried to bring in that type of material into a fairly standard fantasy D&D game. And it did not fly well. He would try to do things like, if you remember the Sohei class from Oriental Adventures,
Yeah.
Oh God,
Not
barely.
he was playing as Sohei and was trying to argue that he should get bonus feats like a fighter because he was a fighting class. If you remember back in 1st edition, they categorized things like paladins and rangers as fighting classes.
Oh no.
And
So he was just like confused and obstinate.
yeah, and he was really hard to deal with. And we got into a couple of arguments a few times, and I just basically told him that this is how I was going to run it, and he would be welcome to stay if he wanted to, but he'd have to abide by the set of rules. And he stopped showing up.
Oh, nice.
Dude, that
Well, not.
that fixed itself.
Right.
I honestly think that's the best way to deal with that sort of thing. Like,
With the 2 young women, however, they showed up continuously and continued to derail the game until they got bored and eventually left a semester later.
oh, good.
Huh.
Well, at least they left. Man, the
Yeah.
problem with chicks.
I did not have a lot
be relied on.
of success gaming in college either. I don't know. It was kind of like I didn't really put myself out there like hunting for other gamers too much. And what kind of wound up happening was I played once with some older guys who I had known through my sister, who went to the same college that I did. And I'm not saying that was a mistake, but I think the biggest problem for me was that they were all really good friends before we started playing together. And only one of them was like a really big gamer, so they were all playing because he really wanted to play. And so the game was just kind of what he wanted to run, and he wanted to run like Tomb of Horror style, getting your arms ripped off sort of game. And I was kind of looking to play something a little more mirthful, so I made a bard, and well, I don't know. I don't want to.
And
It's not that funny. He was
I actually feel like I'm in the future.
a bard who used a whip, and the game died before he did, but it was just barely. And then it was probably at least a whole year worth of school. Granted, I still played with you all when I would be home from school, but it was probably a year's worth of school that I didn't play at all. And then I got into a Star Wars role-playing game that changed my life because it was just the worst. All I'm saying is I'm glad that I was invited to play in it because I was very interested in playing, and it helped me get a little bit of that out of my system. But it was like the GM was like a Santa GM, if you know the type. He was just like he would give the players whatever they wanted.
Who wants blasters? I got blasters.
Well, I mean, literally, yes, that's exactly correct.
That's so sad.
Well, it's just like
That's not too bad. I mean, if you want that.
He
but-
sort of built in conflicting goals for the player characters into the game. So essentially, the game became a competition between the players to trick him into giving us better stuff than the other players. And, so he endowed two of the two other players with force abilities using some sort of machine on a spaceship, which we just found, and we could fly with just the three of us because of robots. Being the non-force user, I got a suit of armor with giant repeating blasters mounted on each shoulder. And I mean, I don't want to give you a play-by-play of the whole game, but all I'm going to say about it is by the end of the game, by which I mean by the last session of the game we played before it was unsustainable any longer, I had killed Boba Fett and I was the Emperor.
Wow.
Oh my god.
So that's a Star Wars game.
That's awesome.
Life changing. Wow. Man,
At least you went all the way.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was
After
thinking.
the Emperor, what else is there? How is that not the end?
I mean,
he also killed Boba Fett, man.
I mean, okay, well, like leading up to that, I had been trying to kill the other two player characters. So he made me the Emperor, and then I just no longer had to worry about killing them, and so the game just kind of stopped happening.
That does sound like
So-
the most ridiculous thing.
so like incompatible group types is a big issue. Like, I feel like there's not a lot of role players out there, not just because the number itself is low, but because it's actually a really wide variety of genre. Like if you look at like sports, has like all kinds of different sports. Like someone who likes sports doesn't necessarily like all of them. It's just like that. And there's so many few people because it's like we tend to play games that have stories, whereas someone might just want to do a get your arms ripped off dungeon crawl,
Right.
and then there might be other people who want to do something kind of silly.
I did sort of have a third experience with gaming in college, but I didn't mention it because it was just a failure to launch. I had essentially several of my non-role-playing game friends had volunteered to play with me, mainly because I was so obviously obsessed with D&D because I was constantly reading books and doing stuff. But it was a while where I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. But then I kind of, over the course of getting ready to do it, realized that none of them really wanted to. They were just doing it to make me happy. And so I just sort of put the kibosh on that and drank some beer instead.
Well, that sounds like a lot of what I've heard from your college days.
I also was enrolled in some classes.
Sure you were.
I don't know, it just seems like there's a difference between
Right.
like gaming with people because they're gamers and gaming with people because they're your friends. And does it just take time? You like after your first group or whatever, like you don't after like you just start gaming with gamers and maybe eventually some of them are your friends. Maybe eventually you bring some other people into the loop. Probably, I don't know.
I mean, it's like any other group hobbies where you have to have other people. If you move to a different location, you aren't friends with the people you're gaming with or that you're doing the hobby with at first, and it is awkward. You have to figure out what they want to do and what you want to do and see if it is a good fit, and that's hard to do without trying.
And
So there are definitely some
Right.
failures. Like when I joined the gaming group at the university here in Chicago, it was a complete failure. They were, again, an older crowd of gamers, and there is a big difference between older gamers and younger gamers in how they approach games. And while I've done both, they weren't really willing to accommodate new players. They had 3 games going total, 2 of which were running bi-weekly, 1 of which was running every week, and they told me that they had no openings for new players to start with.
Oh,
And that was the whole gaming club, huh?
Right. Like every GM I talked to, all 3 of them said that they had no openings for new players, and many of the players would flat out try to ignore me by pretending to read books when I talked to them.
Wow.
And so it was pretty brutal. And I showed up the first time, and then I came back the second time, not expecting much out of it, and I got a few more people to talk to me. And one of the GMs said, "Okay, you can join my game, but basically don't be a jerk." Is kind of the speech they gave me, and I'm like, that's not going to be a problem. And then I made a character, and I showed up for the 3rd week. So this was almost 2 months later at this point because of their schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a character. It was a not a GURPS. I think it was a tri-stat system.
okay.
And she didn't give me any guidelines on what the game was about. Effectively, she said it's set pre-World War II, and people are in Egypt right now.
Huh.
And that's not much of a description. I knew that there was some supernatural because she told me that I should pick some stuff like that. And that's about as much description as I got. So I made a character who is a Chinese geomancer and showed up, and my character was completely redundant. 2 other characters overlapped in what my character did so effectively and had been there so much longer that she started me as a starting level character when they already were highly experienced. So I could not do anything. In addition to that session she did not work me in a 4-hour session. So I sat there for 4 hours and could not roleplay because I was not introduced.
Huh.
The session after that, so this is 2.5 months now that I've been waiting to play in this group. I came back and she worked me in after about half an hour, and I played for a while, realized completely how redundant my character was, realized that she had not explained some of the quirks of the system that she was using as house rules to make my character fairly ineffective, and that she didn't have any interest in involving me in the plot effectively. The gaming group was already set, so I did not show up again after that. I actually never went back to that group.
I'm surprised you stuck that one out for as long as you did.
That was my first semester in Chicago. I had not found any successful gaming group until almost December of that first semester. So that was the first attempt that I found in like October, and I did that until I met with those people in the restaurant. And actually, I found 2 gaming groups the same weekend through that, and both of them were a lot of fun. I GM'd one and was a player in the other, and I eventually combined members of those 2 gaming groups for a game I ran later on. So both of those groups are still active today.
Nice.
So I guess moral of the story: there's going to be misses. You can't get demoralized. You just keep going until you find something that fits, something that works.
Yeah, that's what I had to do every time.
Yeah.
You talked about different genres not talking to each other also, and that is a big issue I found in the first gaming club in undergrad that I went to. There was a LARP going on that used the same space, and there was a huge amount of elitism between gamers who didn't LARP and gamers who did LARP, and they did not want to talk to each other.
Yeah, that sometimes happened. We LARPed a little bit in our high school days, and that would happen like 1 or 2 times a year, where they would have like at the same time where we were LARPing, there would be a whole bunch of regular gamers around.
Less hardcore guys.
Just scenery people in our hallowed Elysium. They didn't get it.
No, those groups did not like each other, and that was weird.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
only ever interacted with, like, I don't know. I don't think I was ever there for any of the times where it was LARPers and other people around in a meaningful way, aside from like the free condom day. There was a LARP going on one of the free condom days, and that was pretty entertaining, I guess. But like I never interacted with any of the other role players who were around, so I never got to feast my eyes on that sort of awkwardness. I sort of feel like I missed part of the experience.
I also think, like, for one reason or another, and I don't know if this is actually true for new gamers or not, but at least when I was growing up gaming, the tendency to be a hater runs very high in gamers. So, like, they'll love what they do forever and hate everything else, if anything, for no reason, I guess. But
That's true.
that's...
I will still occasionally see people from that LARP around town, and I will point them out to my wife like they're dangerous animals. Like, look over there. Don't look. Just look at them when they walk by. That person's a LARPer.
you see them? Don't let the kids around them.
Don't make eye contact, but as soon as they turn around, you silently judge the shit out of them.
That person has LARPed. I've seen them do it. By the fact that I was doing it too. I guess, yeah, I wanted to just wheel back real quick and ask Rory, when you did the thing where you met up in the restaurant, what actual method did you use to organize that?
Okay, so to organize the meeting, I went to one of the online meeting groups.
Okay.
I don't remember which one it was because it was 6 years ago now.
Like Meetup or something like that?
Yeah, it was like Meetup.com or one of those generic ones that was not role player based, but had ways to post about role playing as well. And I talked with them. We exchanged basically some messages on there a few times, and then we agreed to meet in person and see about starting a game. And like I said, there were 4 other people besides me who showed up to that meeting. One of them did not come back after the initial contact. The other 3 were all interested, and then me and another person were both offered to run. No one was really preferential, so we actually ended up rolling a die to see who would be running the game.
Were they all members of groups before then, or no?
Yes. But, like I said, one of them hadn't gamed for over 15 years. He hadn't gamed since first edition. And so he was effectively a non-gamer at that point in many ways.
Okay.
Because he knew nothing about third edition. He actually knew nothing about second edition even, and had been playing computer games and stuff like that, but had not actually gamed. Another one had gamed some, but sporadically, and he was looking to try a more serious group, but he had basically done more one-shot or event-type games than a actual long-term campaign. And the last member had a lot of gaming experience. He started gaming in high school. He was just out of college. So, I mean, he had a good chunk under his belt, and he had done a diverse number of games, miniatures, board games, and role-playing games.
Yep.
And so it was a good mixture of kind of the range of where people are coming from for a group.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a little more about that one because that's the sort of success that bears trying to replicate, I guess. I don't know. It just seems like a very cool kind of intro to a group.
That is, like, everyone brings a book. Like,
it's like the first episode of a TV show about a gaming group.
Yeah.
It seems like the most effective way to do that, or the least effective way, is to join another group that has already worked, and the most effective is to either bring someone with you, like your friends, or to be wherever your friends are, or, if that fails, you have to get people that aren't necessarily in a group but are eager.
Starting a new group is another way that we haven't talked about at all. Like literally teaching people how to game.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
That is true. And I mean, people can be receptive to that, and sometimes they're not, but yeah.
I think I've been browsing things while I'm at work. I probably shouldn't say that on the podcast, but I don't care.
You were in trouble.
I've been browsing things, and I was reading about Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2 and that sort of thing, and I was thinking to myself while I was there, I was like, I bet that'd be a really good gateway drug for like getting people like back in the day, of course, because they're old as fuck now. But like, you know, like you know, you find people who are, you know, role players or role playing gamers, that is, and you get them to play Baldur's Gate 2, which is like a legendary, you know, above and beyond super awesome PC game, and you know, I mean, same goes with like Neverwinter Nights and that sort of thing. I bet if you hunt those people down, you find the people who've played those but haven't role played. I bet you could get a pretty decent collection of people who would be receptive to role playing but haven't tried it yet. I don't know.
Oh, one advantage of the meeting people in real life, now that I think about that more, I think there's a lot of advantages to that. First of all, there's the whole issue of the person isn't going to leave the house. That person just isn't going to come, so you're not going to have to worry about them. Second of all, you want to game with people who you can like meet up somewhere. So if you're all meeting in a public place, then assumedly everyone lives close enough,
And no one gets raped.
and
If it's
yeah, a
public.
public place is going to be relatively safe. And then like yeah, it's not necessarily an established group, so everyone kind of is going to be a little bit more friendly, not have so much standards or, I guess, preconceptions. I don't know. That's really unique and cool. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's neat.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide now which of these methods would be the best for me to try first.
Well, the absolute the method that's guaranteed to fail is nothing. 'Cause,
That's true.
If you never try to find another group, and this is for anyone, then you are guaranteed to never find another group.
That's true. You're relegated to masturbating
What?
until the end of your days.
Let me weave a scenario for you. What if a group of people wearing ski masks breaks into my house? I am placed in a van. The van drives a circuitous route around the region, and I'm brought to a warehouse with a table with a bare light bulb above it, tied to a chair. A bag of dice is placed in front of me. My restraints are removed, and I am forced to play D&D. What about that scenario? I wasn't trying then. I was kidnapped by these guys. They just wanted to play with me so bad.
You have built up kind of a reputation for yourself.
That is the loophole.
Yeah, I'm kind of the bad boy of southeastern Minnesota D&D.
I mean, it has to be somebody. It may as well be you.
Oh, it must as well be me. Oh, yeah, I agree. I mean, granted, we have been doing a fair amount of Skype gaming, and that's enjoyable, no doubt.
It's been fun.
However, when we meet in person, I don't have as much trouble talking to you as I do over Skype. You tend to
That's
hear the
because-
things I say, and I hear you in
Exactly.
return, and we never suddenly disappear from one another's presence.
That's not entirely true.
Yes.
The internet sucks.
Joe and Ebo are both people who have suddenly disappeared from our presence.
And
I mean, they've been there, just not actively there.
I do take some bathroom breaks.
And Joe goes to sleep. And Ebo sometimes goes to sleep also.
I never go to sleep.
Never goes to
No,
sleep.
never.
He just retreats from consciousness in other ways.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly.
But yeah, no.
I'm mentally not there. Physically, I'm there.
To get back to my basic point is I have cooked up the idea of and I hope nobody I'm talking about will ever listen to this, of
Elaborate.
putting
Okay,
a second string dream team made up of my wife and our friend who doesn't really play anymore, and someone we played with in high school who I still hang out with from time to time and maybe plays. And then there's always I mean, I could throw myself on the mercy of Rory's brother, who still lives in town and still games.
You can show up at the tower any weekend. They're going to be gaming.
But the problem
Every
I have
weekend, in
problem I
fact.
have with that is every time I go there, I sort of feel like I am stepping into, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a 1970s movie or something. It's like smoky, and it's a whole bunch of people with outlandish physical characteristics, and
So like Dick Tracy.
and there's this guy I used to live right next to when I was a kid, and he, you know, It's not that he looks weird. It's just that I feel like a child when I'm near
It
him.
doesn't look right.
Well, no, I'm just saying it's like I feel like I'm reverting to my youth when I'm near him. Anyway, I'm just saying it's like it's a weird experience for me. But yeah, I probably could. It wouldn't be that weird. I know those people fairly well, but I still probably am too much of a pansy to do that. To say, hey, I'm here. Get used to it.
That's
That,
pretty much.
I mean, that is an issue when you're finding a new group.
Right.
There's that social disorder of joining a group that you're not really comfortable with, and that's sometimes really, really hard to motivate yourself to do.
And I think ultimately what it is that I'm caught between two extremes where it's I could either do the thing where I'm essentially raising a group for my own benefit, joining a group
As if it were a child.
joining a group that is just fine without me for my own benefit. And what I'm essentially left with is the best option seems to be to try to disengage from either of those things, either entirely or at least mostly, and kind of just try to find somebody in the area who's as desperate as I am to be playing more.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a depressing way to say it, but like, just other people looking for groups.
Right. Well, I'm saying how desperate I am because it's
No, I prefer the depressing way. Actually, I think it has a nicer ring to it.
well, it's because what I really want is I want people who are passionate about gaming with me. Like the thing is like the joining the established group, it's like I probably would be welcome there, but they don't need me. They're not getting anything special from me being there. I mean, maybe one day we'll become true friends and I'll give them my kidney or something, but the point is that
Don't give Blaze your kidney. He's gonna ruin it.
I would not give him a kidney.
I only picked him because you're of roughly
I'm
equal
sorry.
like mass.
I've seen how he treats his kidneys, and it's worse than mine. But it's like there's these people who are perfectly happy gaming without me, and then there's these people who are perfectly happy not gaming without me, and then there's got to be somebody out there who's unhappy because they're not gaming, and it could be with me. I mean, I think
what you have to do
I'll
is
see so
convince the
clear.
people who don't game. You have to convince them that they are unhappy because they're not role playing.
With you.
Oh man,
I'm
it would
starting
be
to
really
think of
cool.
a different ski-mask scenario here, Ed, but we could talk about that off the mics.
Nice.
I don't want anything to do with the ski mask scenario. I've had enough of that. I've put that life behind me.
We're doing a different kind of role playing tonight. Sorry. My ski mask scenario just took a weird turn. But yeah, I'm very comfortable with the analogy I've come up with, and if you guys don't like it, then you can just go play games with each other who live together, guys.
Yeah, we do that all the time.
We do that all the time because our lives are fun.
It was worth it.
I mean, I still think a good way to meet people who might be interested in gaming, if you want to kind of organize a group, is to go to local events that are related to gaming, but not necessarily gaming. Like board game days or card game tournaments, or if there is a local gaming, video gaming group of some sort that holds meetings, doing something like that, showing up, participating as a member of that group, and then bringing up gaming and the possibility of running a game, or joining a game, it is a really good way to kind of break the ice, and it's fun in its own merit as well.
Yeah.
You like having fun, don't you, Ed? Yeah, see, now I'm just trying to apply all of these scenarios to Ed.
You
because
know I hate fun.
I feel that he needs the help. He's our desperate lost puppy, and now we need to find him like a home and food and a lot more food.
I didn't set out to make myself seem so appealingly pathetic, but it is what I'm good at. Being
It's a
pathetic.
gift.
Yeah, it is my.
You have
It
to
is
have
a-
a skill.
It is a gift and it is a curse. But it is also neither of those things. I'm just normal pathetic, not special pathetic.
Wow.
That
Oh,
applies
this is-
generally to, we'll say all of us.
Sorry, it just got so sad in here. I think I need to take a nap.
naps.
I'm so sad.
Sadness makes you want to nap.
We should probably move on.
Yeah, we should.
Sadness makes me want to nap, particularly Ed's sadness, because it's really soul crushing.
All right. Well, I mean, yeah. I think the soul crushing sadness can be put on the back burner for right now. We can simmer that down until it's a rich, sad gravy that we can pour all over our potatoes. We also had been planning, and I think that we still have time to talk a little bit about being a good player and all of the various things that could mean.
We don't spend a lot of time, at least we haven't spent a lot of time traditionally, talking about players. It's easy to say that we all have in common that we're all players, but we're all GMs also. I mean, I think that it's sort of a unique dynamic, that we all approach games from two angles, We all look at it in two different ways. But, I mean, it's easy to overlook the sort of, niceties that you observe when you're a good player.
Yeah, like when you're GMing, you've got to keep track of a lot of things, and there's a lot of work, and so it's like it seems like that's the complicated thing. So that's what we've been talking about. But really, like, there's a world of a difference between a good player and someone who's just kind of there.
Yeah, there is, and like I think that the in general, it's being a good player has to do with two specific categories to me, and that's being good to the other players and being good to the GM. Of course, that seems obvious since they're the only people who are there aside from you and maybe like somebody's wife who's making sandwiches. But sorry, it was just an assumption.
Wow.
You're not making us any friends here tonight.
So that's not sexist at all.
Shame on
I
you.
use that as an example because one time we roleplayed and Jenny made me sandwiches and it was awesome.
That is not your right.
Anyway, now I'm a bad person and not just a bad player.
You've been a bad person the whole time.
Yeah, you're just now a bad person on the internet.
Okay, well, I've been a bad person on the internet.
It's not exactly an elite crowd, but yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm part of the cool kids now.
Okay, I think it's important to note that
we're not like Lee.
We've all been. No, I'm. You're a lot more like Lee than you think.
I'm going to go into a corner for a while.
What I was going to say is we've all been bad players from time to time, and I think that there's a big difference between having an off session where you are just tanking it for everyone without necessarily meaning to, and just sort of being a bad player in general. And I think that for the most part, natural selection kind of weeds out bad players who are just bad in general. They'll just eventually stop getting invited to games or stop having fun at games because every game they're in turns out to be an unmitigated disaster, and they'll just stop, being involved. Sometimes that doesn't always work as efficiently as we'd like, but we are all guilty of at least the periodic offenses.
Yeah.
I think when you say someone's a bad player, there's a lot of degrees of latitude in there.
Right.
There are. I think that it there are traits that people associate with bad players. Like you have bad players, people who are disruptive, like you said. Like it sucks to have a player who is constantly trying to undermine the GM or undermine the other players, and just they have their own agenda that they're going to stick to under any circumstances, and that agenda is only fun for one person.
In broad strokes, I would say that the definition of a bad player that I'm going for is anyone who prevents any other player or GM from having fun. And it is seldom on purpose, I find, because we usually don't surround ourselves with people who are being dickwads.
Real life trolls.
Yeah, I think I don't know. There's two gigantic ballparks of this. Like what I'm thinking of more is the person who gets really into their character or something they're doing and like accidentally hogs the whole game or puts the game in a direction no one else wants to go. Like, that's the sort of lesser ballpark. Like, I wasn't really, when we were talking about bad players, thinking about like the guy who shows up drunk and it acts belligerent and throws poo at people the whole session. Like, I'm not talking about like,
Look, Jeff, that was only one time.
I'm not talking about like out of game bad players that
Right.
just like screw up the whole like everything. Like,
No, they're
you know.
the extreme group and also the vast minority.
Or like the guy who tries to tell you that his fighter needs to have, or his whatever needs to have all the feats because he's a fighting class. Like, that's a totally different level that they just get weeded out. But
Right.
but
And I
yeah,
have a feeling that deep down those people know.
I don't have that feeling.
And
I mean,
okay.
Like, go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead,
There-
Rory.
there are some players that do minor offenses, let's say, that you can still keep in a game and still show up regularly, that you can work around and know that that's more of a quirk, though it's a distracting quirk. One player who joined a game I was running again in that gaming group, but a different year, consistently cheated. And consistently cheated very, very badly. Like rolling a fireball at 9th level and telling me he dealt 66 damage.
Well,
So illogical
that's-
cheating.
Yeah, cheating that could not function from the math of the game.
Well, that
It just
sounds
did not work. So what I consistently did is, because he cheated and everyone knew he was cheating, but he was okay to be around in every other way. So I just halved his damage.
Cheat back.
And I just took his damage and literally took it in half, and that's what I recorded every time. And I wouldn't denote saves or ACs, so that way he would have to tell me what he was rolling.
Right.
So
Wow.
it mitigate his cheating factor, and people had a lot of fun of the game because he was fun to hang around most of the time. It's just this one aspect was really annoying.
And then you, behind the scenes, took care of business. See,
Right.
I think a lot of most people are going to have quirks, like you said, like things that are avoidable, things that are fixable for either on their end or on the GM's end. And it's like, I think the thing to note is that, like, I don't know, I think, like, we've hung around with each other for a long time, and over time I think we can be honest with each other about it, but in a lot of gaming rooms you can't. And like you said, you just sort of took care of it in the background. And I think that's like extremely elegant. That's a good way of dealing with it. With the single bad player syndrome. Like, I think the more subtle and insidious ones are people who don't realize that they're doing something that's disruptive. Like Justin, like people who will hog a whole thing without even realizing it, just because they're into it, or they'll derail a whole session because they have this one idea. I'm not saying that I'm particularly free of guilt on that one, but the point is that I think everybody does it sometimes, and is it as avoidable as simply being able to identify it, or should it just be relied on the other players and GM to work around that sort of thing?
I think it's if a person can identify it when it's happening, then that's probably good enough. But there is an area there where you don't want to act like self-loathing either. Like, if you have a really cool idea and you want to do it, you don't want to just like stop doing cool things because you're afraid you're going to take up too much of the game's time. Like, I think that's actually worse than
I think
screwing a session. I mean,
a better attitude, like just taking the little subject we basically started raking over the coals here, basically time wasting, like one person using the time so that nobody else gets it. I would say one easy step you can take is just forgive everybody else for doing it. That way you will have earned it when you use some of it up. As long as it's not completely like nixing your fun, like, so the bard likes to, make a couple of perform rolls every time we're in a tavern, and nobody else is really doing anything, but they really like it. Maybe the thing where you're like, your dad is the baron and all this quest is about you. Maybe you'll want to do some more you stuff later, and if you just let the bard have his moment in the spotlight, he's not going to be as contrary about it when it's your turn.
Not gonna whine.
And maybe he will, but at the very least, you can defend yourself affirmatively by saying, I really want to do this, and I really don't have a problem when you do things that are just for your character. And if that's a problem for everybody, then we'll have to talk a little bit more about what we're gonna do as a group.
Yeah, I think open talking about it is probably, like the best method.
Being reasonable.
Yeah, it's like, I think that for a gaming group to work, they're gonna, if there's a problem, they're going to have to talk about it,
right.
And it's difficult a lot of the time to talk to people about that sort of thing. Especially, like we were talking about, it might actually be, something that's like really difficult to deal with in a gaming group that you've never been part of, or if you're making a new gaming group. Like, we've all been friends for a long time. We can, for the most part, just bust each other's chops all day. And
that's not true.
Okay.
I would have to disagree with that. I think, like, for some reason with us particularly, talking about stuff like that is more awkward than I think it would be with random people. Like, at least that's the feeling I get.
I always felt like, I guess like those of us in the room and Ed and Rory, I always felt like we dealt with it pretty well.
That's one.
I think it was very passive aggressive.
I don't think
we ever were out in the open with.
I was just going to use that exact phrase. I feel like passively we have dealt with one another passively to some good effect.
Well, then maybe we should have just been more open about it.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't going in the wrong direction there.
No, I wouldn't encourage other role players to be passive aggressive. That's probably the dark side.
That is a recipe for a batch of angry emails. My friends are no longer my friends. Thanks, jerk.
That's what Facebook is for, doy.
I tried to use your idea.
If you know you made a mistake, it's sometimes hard to admit it also, and that's something that makes the conversation awkward to start this. If you had a bad day and you bring that into the game, it can make for a really bad session.
Yeah.
But admitting that afterwards is sometimes really hard to do.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess, like, in terms of the example we had used earlier of, the distribution of spotlight, it's one of those things where you want to keep doing it even if you know it's wrong, because you can't always tell if it's affecting other people in a negative way. Like, you're having fun, they all appear to be having fun, but maybe they appear to be having fun because I'm having a lot of fun. I don't know.
And a player doing something on their own, it can be very interesting to other players, and that definitely happens, which is why, like, I really take this topic with hesitance, I guess, because you don't want people to get self-conscious and just shut themselves down and not play.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, it's a difficult one to broach, and I think like that sort of thing is, it falls onto the GM's shoulders a lot of the time to make the judgment calls about that sort of thing, but
as a player section, one small piece of advice, and obviously this isn't a silver bullet, but just involve like one other player.
Yeah,
every once in a while when you're doing stuff on your own, just like look for an excuse to bring one other player along and see if anyone else is like actually receptive to being involved in your shit. Because then also you get to do the thing you want to do where you're in the spotlight, but someone else might get involved and like interplayer role playing might happen, and it might be awesome, and maybe nothing will come of it. But that's just one thing you can try.
I think that's great advice, just in general. We've seen, I think, more of that happening recently. Just where people if people like, I remember in high school a lot of the time it was some and and even a little while afterwards it was like something would be happening, and like everybody else in the session would be like, "Hey, did I hear about that?" Yeah, you know what I mean. And I think that happens a
Right.
lot less now, just in general.
I think that might
People
have been
just get more involved.
I think in high school that might have been a product of the size of our group as well. I
That's
mean, when we
true.
were running sessions
Yeah.
with 10 players plus,
Oh my
it's
God,
really
yeah.
hard if someone takes the spotlight.
Yeah.
It is.
Next week, the problem with running with over 8 players, or 5 even.
I would.
Oh, those games were so fun, but when I look at it now, like games just seem to shut down over a certain amount of players, and
But those games are so fun, and everyone was into it.
One thing I was gonna say about Jeff's recommendation of bring another player character along in your thing is one thing that I've been doing a lot more of, particularly since we've been gaming over Skype, and sometimes it's a little difficult to kind of get your say in. What I've been doing a lot more than I would usually or historically have done is I've just been sitting out of other people's things. Like sometimes sometimes like inviting more people and including everybody is good, but sometimes your character doesn't really need to be there. Your character doesn't
Yeah.
really need to be doing something of, it's like I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go talk to my mentor. I'm gonna be talking to my mentor for 77 minutes, and it's like I need to plan out 77 discrete 1-minute activities for my character to be doing. It's just like the character that I'm playing in Jeff's current Drow game is the sort of character who will, when nothing is going on, will just kind of sit all alone and not really think anything weird about it. Just kind of find a little corner to hide in. And
Yeah.
I've been trying to bring that out. Just like if this isn't something that directly involves me, my character's bored, which is something that is almost never true of my player. But I've just sort of been, I'll absorb what everybody else is doing, and my character doesn't really need to be, hogging any of that spotlight. I'm avoiding the spotlight in a figurative and literal kind of way.
Yeah, you made a character who doesn't like to be talked to or interacted with in the first place.
I'm sort of trying to develop that a little bit with current events, but that's basically the heart of it is, doesn't like to be interacted with. Yeah, I think that's pretty close to it.
And I'm a person who tends to make characters who make a spectacle of themselves one way or another, and just in general, I've been trying a lot of what Jeff is saying. Where if something important to my character is happening, I will more often than not try to seek out a player character to interact with, regardless of what's going on, just because it seems like you get more valuable game time out of it.
yeah, I mean, you can come up with an excuse. If you're saying to yourself that you can't come up with an excuse, you're saying to yourself that you don't want to come up with an excuse.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
I can
generally
see situations where you don't want to come up with an excuse, but the majority of the time.
I mean, I'm not saying do this all the time. It's just something to think about every once in a while.
I mean, your schemer character doesn't need to have a dude along with him every time he goes skulking around somebody else's home.
No, definitely not.
But
I
like
mean,
some of
everybody,
the time,
everybody needs a patsy.
Well, okay. Using the other player characters as patsies is something that I'm always up for, being the patsy in a role-playing game. Like,
you so
oh
are.
god, that's so fun. But yeah, usually without Rory in the game, we don't get players scheming to screw up the other players. So
I don't do that very often.
I know. I just,
You do it the most often.
Well, perhaps.
Yep. That's a skill that I'm envious of. I find it hard to bring myself to sabotage other people's characters.
Yeah,
I mean, sabotaging another player's character is not something that's necessarily bad. It can really add to a game as long as you don't immobilize their character in the plot
That's
through
true.
like
You have to-
death or
also,
cutting
I
them off or something like that. I mean,
think
you
there's
can
something
really
about
get them
picking the right target too.
you can tell when it's relatively mutual. Like the easygoing sort of, I want to say Joe of the group isn't really going to care as much, and they're just going to kind of roll with it. But yeah.
Like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. How unfortunate. I don't understand.
It's time to make a new character. Scribble, scribble, scribble.
Whereas sometimes
Wasn't that really fun? I took your character out of the game.
you'll just be like, oh, I can't. My character has no idea who did this. Oh, he's so mad, and he doesn't know who to be mad at. But I do. I'm gonna walk towards Rory's character, punching in front of me with my eyes closed, and see what happens.
I mean, one of the sessions where that happened that I had a lot of fun was, if you remember back in your Chronicles game, when Gargor wanted to wear that crown. Was it the necklace?
Amulet.
That amulet, yeah. I had a lot of
kill the
fun
wizards. Yeah, that was
with him
awesome.
killing the wizards, us flying in the ceiling
Yeah.
and trying to avoid him and getting him to take off the necklace. And we were directly in conflict with each other. We weren't really sabotaging, but I think it worked really well and allowed all of us to be in the spotlight.
The
It
wizards
was
are like,
an exceptionally funny time in my life right there.
we know better. We don't want to let Gargor have the evil amulet. Meanwhile, Gargor is making checks to jump at the wall towards them and throw his axe.
I was a little
I had
concerned there for a
I had a
while.
bow.
The axe might work.
The bow certainly did not
It was
work.
like once the axes I had were gone, it was time to shoot a bow at people that I couldn't hit because I had no dexterity.
I'm
Or
not,
not
you were
enough.
not good at shooting
not
that
sure
bow.
how directly related this is, but that game too, that game kind of, I mean, it's sort of had a number of iterations, but the original one climaxed on a very heavily interplayer conflict sort of.
Oh, that was fantastic.
God, we tried to kill, like, all of us were trying to kill each other.
I really think what it was more or less Lee's character and Ebo's character and all of the NPCs against Rory and I and Sean, who I coerced into doing it by threatening to kill him.
Yep.
So
Yes,
that
that
was
is exactly it.
And then at some point during the fight, you all turned against the dragon.
I tried to
think
jump
killed you?
on what?
Who I think killed you? I don't.
I don't remember.
I certainly
actually
didn't
remember.
die. Man, you make a rogue with a high enough reflex save, you're practically immune to dragons.
All I remember is Ed flying off the side of this floating thing, and I tried to jump on him because that is what barbarians do.
Yeah, I just remember that you guys were willing to kill yourselves in order to kill my annoying elf wizard. So, ta-da!
But that whole campaign kind of even started that way. If you remember the first session where the two groups were introduced to each other, we
Yeah,
almost
there was
killed
a
each
lot-
other.
There was a lot of conflict because people weren't really sure about the other guys, and there was a lot of reason for the players not to trust other people in that game. So yeah.
Yeah, that was an excellent game for sandbagging other players.
That game is also proof to show you that killing a character off is not necessarily the best thing, because my character was so pissed throughout the rest of the game because he died in the first session. Got stabbed in the heart.
was like,
Triple 20s.
It would have been less awesome if he had died permanently. At least we got to experience his awesomeness.
And he died so many times throughout that game. It just
So
made him
many
more
times.
mad.
Didn't we all?
I think what ended up the count was like we ran like 19 sessions of that, and I had died 16.
At least
16 of the 19.
Oh,
It was just
so much
ridiculous.
that was back when we would find reasons to have resurrection available. And we stopped doing that at some point, I think, to go for a higher amount of realism, but it was fun while it lasted.
yeah, in that game it was always like the guy in the Magic City was so close to running out of diamonds that he could not once again. But maybe
He'll shake a finger at you. No, don't keep dying now.
I'm gonna run out of diamonds.
Give you a pat on the back, go back into the world. It's dangerous. Be careful.
Yeah, see,
he died.
I feel like I need to run my my high magic game because there's no consequence for death in that game. No consequence for death is something I miss a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love being able to be, as a player, just as reckless as I friggin' want. And just be like, no, guys, don't worry about it. There's 25,000 gold on my corpse. You can just take that and resurrect me with it. No problem.
You get some really good last lines that way.
Yeah, you do.
a local group that I gamed with here had a last line that if I'm not back in 10 minutes, I'm still kicking ass. We never saw that character again.
Oh, that was sad.
That guy. You know, I've never met that person, probably, but I like to think that he and I would be good friends.
We have introduced so many interesting sidebars that I want to go into, but I think we are pretty close to running out of time for this episode. That starting an entire new chunk would probably be a disaster.
Well, we'll definitely talk about some of this stuff in more detail in the future.
And
yeah, Rory's gone.
I will write it down this time.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, this was a good episode. I'm very I'm jacked up for the next one now because we have so many awesome being a good player and giant games and other awesome subject matter that we are practically drooling to lay down.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Rory.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it was fun.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have you around sometime, but not next time, because next time we need to talk about you. And you've already admitted that you're not listening to our podcast.
Behind your
so-
back. We know he doesn't listen now, so we can
I
say
listen to
anything.
sometimes. I listen. I'm on the forums.
All
We're
right.
just
Well,
trying to talk about it, and then we'll listen to the next one.
yeah. And speaking of forums, don't be a stranger. Anybody is welcome. You
Oh
can,
yeah.
Solinum forums. We have a section specifically for you if you want to talk about our podcast.
Introduce yourself. Send us an email or something.
tell us anything that you'd like to hear.
podcast@houseful.com.
We blog about things that we don't talk about in the podcast, and sometimes things we do talk about in the podcast. Comment on that stuff. We might mention your awesome comments or awesome forum posts in our podcast. Then you can be celebrities like we are.
Yeah, exactly.
This goes full circle.
Warning:
for
all
listeners.
all content must be awesome.
Yeah, if it's not
Yeah.
awesome, we're certainly not going to talk about
Yeah.
it.
According to Lee, this is all going to be very awesome.
It
So
is.
Welcome to the awesome. All right. Well, we are out of here, so we will see you next time.
Later.
Bye.
There's always masturbation.